Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Dee Brown. Thanks for being on the show, Dee.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And Dee is the president and CEO of the P3 Group Incorporated. The P3 Group specializes in delivering essential government facilities and infrastructure through the creation of public-private partnerships. The P3 Group offers a turnkey design build finance solution for government agencies and nonprofits. Dee, thank you again for your time being on the show. Give us a little more about the P3 Group, what your focus is, what you all do, and let's jump in.
Great. So the P3 Group, as you stated in the introduction, we are a real estate development and consulting firm that specializes exclusively in public-private partnerships. And so our typical client is going to be a municipality, county government, college, university, that has a desire to improve their community, their campus, through developing critical infrastructure for the communities. And so what we do, we come in and we provide 100% design build finance solution, because oftentimes these agencies may not have within their capital budgets the cash to actually execute on projects. Many times they don't want to use their general obligation capacity to do these projects because they don't want to strain on their financial statements. And so what we do, we're able to come in, structure the projects where they do not pledge their full faith and credit behind the obligation. We provide 100% of the capital to not only design, engineer the projects, but also to construct, to acquire sites that are needed for these projects. And we're able to do this in an expedited format. So a typical project that would take a governmental agency, 18 months to 2 years to get under construction, under our integrated project delivery method, we have executed projects and started construction as little as 84 days from the time that we enter into the agreement. And that's because we have integrated into our system both architects and engineers, construction managers. We hold all the construction contracts. So all of the risks associated with executing a project has been transferred to the private sector. And so what we do differently than what a government agency can do, because we have the integrations of all of those different expertise here collaborating together, we're able to actually develop a guaranteed maximum price real early in the process before we start developing construction documents. So we can guarantee that agency or that entity that at the end of the construction process, we're going to deliver this project to you for this guaranteed price. And they don't have to worry about the risk of change orders and the things that normally come with, executing on government projects under a design bid build methodology.
I would imagine that's very valuable to them to know that price and that this is what it's going to be. I would say that's pretty important to them most of the time. And a few things I want to ask you about, I wanted to back up just a little bit. But, you talk about the design build finance. I mean, ultimately, you all can bring all those pieces, and like you said, just get a project completed and probably much faster for a local government or local entity like that, as opposed to the normal process they would have to go through. And maybe you can speak to that. I think a lot of times they have to, get tons of bids on all kinds of different things versus, hiring someone like yourself that can just take care of all that. What does that look like, the difference between those two options that, local entities like that would have?
Sure. So in most states, if a government agency decides to go out on their own and do a design bid build process, oftentimes they have to have a public referendum. So a vote of the people approving the project. Our process does not require a public referendum in almost all cases. And so under the traditional design bid build method, the local municipality would hire an architect, pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket to design the project. Then they would secure funding for the project. And once all of that is done, then they would go out for bid. And so what we see happen oftentimes especially in communities where they don't have the level of sophistication to manage these projects. And even in some that do, when the bids come in, they're 20, 30% above the budget that was established. And the reason that occurs is because when the architect is designing the project, there is no feedback from the actual construction community. So you have an estimate or estimated cost of what the project is going to cost, but you don't really know. And so just that process alone that I described could take a year. And then if the project comes in above budget, you end up with some plans that you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on that you can't execute, or you find yourself trying to value engineer those plans, or you go out and try to raise more capital to fill the gap. And oftentimes, when we talk to agencies that have been through this experience, they take this project, it will take that project 2 to 3 years to actually get under construction using that methodology. When you look at our method, where we provide the complete design build finance using an integrated project delivery method, then what you get is really a robust system of collaborators all together working with the governmental agency to understand what are the needs for the facility that you're trying to have built. And so we actually designed that building from the input that the end user gives us. So when we're doing this design, we're pricing it in real time, and we're establishing preliminary budgets in real time. So what that allows us to do is manage expectations. So we're able to tell the end user, the governmental agency that we're partnering with in real time that, hey, here's the preliminary budget for what you're requesting. Is this within an acceptable range? So with that preliminary budget, we've also reviewed their credit, and we understand from an interest rate perspective what's the rate is going to be for this financing package. And we can give them a 30-year, 25-year, 20-year, whatever they want amortization of what their payments will be. So not only are you looking at price, you're looking at all your soft costs, and you're looking at your payment. And then once that agency says this budget is acceptable, we go into design development documents. And that when we get to 100% design development documents, our team can actually deliver a guaranteed maximum price at the end of 100% design development documents. And so we can post a surety bond at that point and guarantee that we're going to build that building for that price before we start developing construction documents. And so all of the risk to deliver that project has been lifted from the public sector and now transferred to our team because we have guaranteed that price and they have approved it. So not only do they know the price, they know what their annual or semi-annual payments are going to be. They know what we project the interest rate to be based on the profile of that particular municipality or governmental entity. And we deliver oftentimes under that budget and under that interest rate that we predicted. So what happens is it creates a win-win-win scenario for that municipality, because what I'm describing to you in terms of our process, we have a maximum of 120-day timeline that we execute in. And so the last few projects that we've closed under this method, we have closed in 84 days, 117 days. We're still coming in under that 120 days. And we're talking about from the time of conceptually, we want to enter into an agreement with you all to putting shovels in the dirt.
Wow. No, that's fast. That's incredible. And much faster than most, government entities would expect, right? They wouldn't expect anything like that to happen that fast. I'm interested kind of in the structure of your all's process or of the deal. And you're all said, I assume, if you're raising the funds to make this happen, initially, you have investors that are investing with you all. What is this, just the structure of that deal look like? And how is that handed over to that government entity, and what's your involvement then?
Sure. So our typical structure involves a tax-exempt lease purchase agreement. So we establish a special purpose entity. The government agency is the lessee in the transaction. Our special purpose entity is the lessor. And so we structure that transaction essentially as either a bond offering or a private placement. And so we don't have individual investors. We focus on creating tax exempt transactions. So when we structure that transaction, we're selling it into the tax exempt bond markets. And so our buyers of these leases are institutional investors that are looking to put tax exempt bonds on their books, who are looking to invest in projects for CRA credits, or who just simply like the security of municipal type debts because of the very, very low risk and guaranteed rate of return on the investment.
Okay, no, that's awesome. And tell me about, are you all mostly, it would be, the way you would make money would be like fees on these things, to completing the project, or maybe by certain timelines?
Sure, we charge a developer fee for handling the transaction. We don't mark up the lease payments. We don't mark up any other costs. We just get a fixed developer fee. And once we turn the transaction over to the bond trustee, that trustee actually serves as the landlord for the duration of the financing. And since it's a tax exempt lease purchase agreement, at the end of the financing term, the city or county or agency can purchase the asset for $1. So what happens is it functions just like a mortgage would function. You have an amortization schedule, you have a fixed interest rate, you can see what your payment is at any, your payoff is at any time during the course of the financing. So it functions just like a mortgage. You can pay it off early. Oftentimes, there's a prepayment penalty during the early parts of the financing, which is typical for tax exempt transactions, but you always are able to exit the transaction and pay off the debt early. And we can structure the transaction based around the goals that particular agency may have in terms of financing. And so just to give you a quick example, we closed a transaction a month or so ago where there's a new casino opening up in the community, and the county is anticipating this large influx of additional cash flow from the tax revenue. So even though we were doing a 30-year financing, their internal plan is to retire the debt within 10 years. So what we did, we got them a blended rate of 2.4%. Moody's rated the transaction as an A2 because we did not require a full pledge of credit on the transaction. However, during the first 10 years, the interest rate is 1.83%. So if they were to meet their goal and pay the debt off within the first 10 years, and they would accomplish that by paying off the loan bonds first. So in other words, when they get ready to make a prepayment, it's going to years 20 to 31st. And then as they continue to pay, it'll pay off years, 11 through 19. And then at the end of the 10 years, they're out of the prepayment penalty. They can pay the balance off, and they exit the transaction with 1.83% interest.
That's so nearly free money right there.
Nearly free money. And they did not pledge their full faith and credit behind the transaction. So they did not have to have a public referendum in order to execute the project.
Speak to just the normal types of projects that you're completing, and maybe the types of communities as well that are going to benefit the most from your services. Sure.
So tier 2, tier 3 type communities are the ones that I think benefit the most. Again, all of the P3 developers are chasing the mega projects, right? The $100 million, $200 million projects. Our projects typically fall between $10 and $50 million. Is a typical project size. And we're doing projects like coroner's offices, health units, courthouses, fire departments, police departments, public safety complexes. So these are projects that are essential to the vitality of the communities. And so the reason that this process helped the tier 2 and tier 3 cities more than it does the larger cities is because those cities do not have the resources to have on their payroll the expertise to actually execute these projects. And so what I've found in smaller communities, they'll put out a contract under a DesignBidBill and sometimes not even have liquidated damages incorporated into the contract. And then they wonder why it takes the contractor so long to finish the project. Well, there's no enforcement mechanism within that contract. And so just not having the skill set and the savviness to understand how to execute these projects and be successful can save the communities tens of thousands of dollars, not just in time, not just in reduced cost of materials, but also in not having to value engineer a project, not having to go out and raise additional capital because it came in above budget.
Awesome. Well, speak to, I mean, all you do, you're working with government entities just day in and day out. I know there's a lot of developers and even people who are just doing value add projects that are listening that, have to better understand how to work with government entities or in agencies and people that are, of influence in the government in the local communities where they're buying properties or developing. Can you speak to just some tips on bettering that relationship to further that, obviously the common goal of bettering that community and how you all have built those relationships?
Yeah, so we built our relationship by focusing on building the community. One of the things we always say is that we don't just build buildings, we build communities. And when we say that, we mean that when we go into a community to execute a project, we're looking to hire local subcontractors and vendors and trades to execute the work. I mean, that is a corporate philosophy, a corporate mission. So this is not a situation where under a traditional procurement, the agency has a DBE or small business requirement that they're mandating on you. Our mandate on ourselves is much more aggressive. So when we go into these communities, we're trying to hit 85% local participation, if not 100%. The last project we started, we have 90% local participation. And so what that does, it leaves the actual dollars from that project within that local community. And so economists tell us that when those dollars are in those communities, stay in those communities, they turn over 6 and 7 times. So what we try to educate the municipalities on is that it really doesn't matter who the general contractor is. What matters is, are they going to hire local subcontractors? Are they going to buy materials locally? Are they going to look for local suppliers and vendors and service providers as part of executing the project? So the way that we've built those relationships with government agencies is that we're actually telling them that our goal is more aggressive than your goal. And our goal is more transparent, because under a traditional design bid build methodology, you really can't see if that contractor has really made a good faith effort. Yeah, they can provide documentation, but it's not a transparent process. Our process is transparent because when we hold a subcontractor fair in the local community, the government is our partner. So they're at the subcontractor fair with us. So we can't manipulate who attended, who didn't attend. And so there's a list that's generated of who attended. And then we're collaborating with our public partner to say, okay, who on this list have you had good experiences with? Or better yet, who have you had bad experiences with? So they're helping us vet the list. And so as we go through the process of selecting subcontractors and selecting service providers as part of this integrated project delivery method, they're at the table with us and they're key to making these decisions. So what that does, it builds goodwill, it builds trust within the community, and it's a transparent process. So we know that that's the most.
Them knowing that you're wanting to work with locals, I mean, that has to be so beneficial, or I would imagine when they start to realize that's your goal, is leaving that money there, and working with local people there. That's got to be so beneficial. But what's the risk, of working solely with government agencies or entities like you do?
The risk, I don't really see it as a risk. I actually see it more as, more security, because in the process, because when you're working with private entities, the structure typically is not there and oversight is not there that you typically have within a governmental agency. So once a board votes to move forward on a project and the government execute those documents, you can pretty much rely on what they're saying to be solid. So I don't really see a higher risk profile in what we do. I see a lower risk profile in actually executing these projects with the government versus in the private sector.
How are you increasing deal flow? When your object is to really work with these government entities, obviously it's different than a lot of people that are listening, but how do you do that? How do you get your name out there to these governments that need your help?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. We have about a dozen business development professionals that work for us. I like to say that we're in the relationship business. So all of our business development professionals have relationships with governmental entities and agencies within their local market. And so they identify needs, and we typically do a full-blown presentation to those agencies, not to sell out services, but to educate them on at least an option that's available to help them realize that they can get projects delivered quickly and efficiently. And what we found is that when these agencies realize that this service is actually available, uh, we've seen politicians, mayors and council people that have had goals in terms of capital projects during their terms in office. And a lot of times they plan these projects out over 2 or 3 terms, thinking, okay, if I can get one done this year, maybe I can, in 4 years, I can get another one done. And what they're doing, they're rolling out 3 and 4 projects at one time with us because they're realizing that all we have to do is budget for payments. We don't have to have this large, pile of money sitting in an account to execute because just really the architectural and engineering fees on these transactions can be, millions of dollars, depending on the size of the transaction. And so they don't have necessarily the cash there to just pay these fees and then try to go to market to get financing. So what they have realized is that if we can budget affordable annual or semi-annual payments, we can get multiple projects done and we'll be under construction in under 4 months. And it's good for the community, it's good for their administration, and it's a good story for us to tell on the business side to help, I guess, further our relationship with other municipalities that are thinking about doing these type of projects, creating those success stories.
Do you have any daily habits that you are disciplined about that have helped you achieve success?
Yeah, I think absolutely. So, one of the things I do pretty much every morning, I normally get up around 4:30 in the morning. And during that time, I'm going to respond to emails. There are always tasks that need to be done that you just can't get in during the day because you're so busy. And so what I found is between 4:30 and 7 a.m., I can get a lot of things accomplished because no one's calling my phone. No one's, pulling on me in different directions. And so getting up early in the morning, already having my task identified for that time frame that I'm going to tackle, it increases productivity. And also it gives me an opportunity to listen to the news, understand what's going on with world events, because oftentimes, and you're listening to the news, and there are things that are going on that directly impact your business. And I'll give you a perfect example. The last CARES stimulus package that passed, I was watching the news, and it says there's 1.4 billion dollars within the package for HBCUs to retire debt that they incurred for student housing and other facilities. Well, from a business perspective, that's good information for me because now as they kind of roll out of debt, we can come in and offer them a solution to get, for example, student housing where they don't have to take on any debt. We issue the debt through our nonprofit organization. We share the revenue with the university, and we'll build it on their campus or near their campus. And they are out of no money up front and have zero risk within the transaction. So now you're able to build your campus, increase your revenues, and really go away from that risk profile that existed many years ago.
What's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
I think consistency and dedication to the highest ethical practices. I think getting up every day, understanding what the goal is, doing it consistently, even when things aren't always at their best, is definitely a key. But also, I think operating with the highest ethical standards. And I tell my team all the time, it's not really about can we do something? Is it legal to do things? It's about making sure that we operate in a manner that does not give the appearance of anything inappropriate, right? Even if it's right, it's the right thing, it's okay to do it. So I think those two things have helped build our brand. And when we go into communities and we work with government officials, and they see our dedication, they see our commitment, they understand that when they reach out to us, they're going to get a response in a timely manner. You're not going to reach out for days and days trying to get someone to call you back. Understanding that as the CEO of this company, that I have to make sure that I have responsibilities delegated appropriately so that I can give attention to the client as if we're executing one project, regardless of how many we may have under development.
No, I can appreciate that. Just the standards of not operating in the gray, right? I mean, we talked to some attorneys about, just ensuring that we are operating as, illegal as possible, right? And they say, oh, this is a gray area. I'm like, nope. Well, then let's back up, right? Let's not go into that area. I don't want any question, or anyone else to look in and think that we're operating in a gray area. That's not okay for me anyway. So right. I appreciate you sharing that, Dee. How do you like to give back?
Well, we have a nonprofit arm, Brown Foundation Community Development Corporation. And through that organization, we have given out tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in scholarships to students that have demonstrated a financial need. We've operated for about 5 years a college retention program with the University and HBCU College in Mississippi. Coahoma Community College, where we actually identify students that were in danger of being kicked out of school because they had balances from previous terms, and if they did not get those balances paid, they would not be able to stay enrolled. And so through that retention program, we helped a number of students remain in college and complete their education by paying those balances. And we've given scholarships for leadership, things of that nature. During the Christmas holidays, we did a project in Mississippi where we took 40 single mothers and we allowed them to go to Walmart and go shopping for Christmas items for their kids. We gave each one a $250 gift card to do Christmas shopping. And so those are the type of things that we like to do, but with a really heavy emphasis on education and making sure that kids from high risk communities are able to complete their education.
Awesome. Well, Dee, it's been a pleasure to get to meet you and just hear about your business of development. And really, it's different than a lot we hear of, working strictly with government entities and helping them and securing this path of a successful build. But really, you all taking and controlling that design, build, finance portion, so they don't have to worry about that, but giving them the security of knowing what it's going to cost or less, right? And so I love that model, and just appreciate you elaborating on the types of communities and help types of builds that you all are doing, and even to waking up early, planning your morning, the success of that consistency. I couldn't agree more. Those small, consistent steps forward make such a big jump as opposed to trying to make one big leap, right? And so just grateful for you sharing that and how you give back. How can the listeners get in touch with you and learn more about you?
Sure. So our website is www.thep3groupinc.com, and our phone number is 800-896-5502. And we're available 24 hours a day, and we'll be happy to help anyone that need our services.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.